So talk a little bit about, because I feel like people talk about best presentation and design, and I feel like out of all the categories in the Ringos, that's often considered the most nebulous. And so for
All these euphemisms from you today, like most nebulous, that means most least important, right?
I was going to just say hardest to understand.
Oh, okay.
And so for those who don't get this category, and I say the same thing, I'm also in this category for going to the chapel, and I am like still like I don't quite get it. So
That's interesting. When I was much younger, not a veteran,
yeah.
I worked for Marvin Glass, which was the first and largest toy think tank, and I got the job,
Mhm.
and kind of based on my creativity and bullshitting in the interview. But so I became the senior designer, but the first day I arrived at work, all of a sudden I realized, like, wow, people design toys. Like, I just thought toys kind of magically appeared, and I never thought about that people design things. And then
Yeah.
I met other people there at the toy think tank who had studied to become designers, industrial designers, and through them I realized, like, people design salt shakers and door handles and briefcases, and everything's designed, and books are designed. So, like, you put together a book of comics, you're not only thinking about the comics,
Mm-hmm.
but you're thinking about the presentation, and they use the word presentation in the title of the award, design
Right.
presentation. So I guess I present, I design books and and through them present comics, and so that's what me and the other fine people that are up for the nomination are being recognized for, our efforts at making a nice presentation, which might be very obvious because some designs are kind of fancy schmancy and
Sure.
in your face, and others are kind of subtle, and you don't realize, like, wow, that salt shaker was designed to be nicely functional and look nice on the table. And that book is, the comics are the main thing, but around it there's a logo, and you decide what paper to use and how much of a margin to leave around the comics, and what the page numbers on the comics will look like, and all these, like, designy schminy things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean this is actually very eye opening for me, because I feel like I I always try to think about stuff like that, especially for my work, and I always just thought I was overthinking it. But now you're telling me no, that there are people that's exactly what they think about. So that actually is very validating for me.
What is it that you do?
Well, I'm a writer, but
Oh, okay.
working sort of on the super indie side of the equation, I'm wind up being sort of the editor and the project manager, and I'm kind of sort of
Right, right,
overseeing
right, right,
every
right.
element of it.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, I have been in the comics field for a long time,
Mhm.
and there's more and more thinking about design now, and these books can look nice, but when I got into comics, they were just all kind of the same. They were the floppy, small size kind of comic books and stuff, and
Mhm.
no one thought about design much. Now I realize that some of the companies that I like Dell, these are old companies that they're no longer in business, so we're losing the young people who are switching off. But there was companies like Dell and Charlton and people like that actually put design chops into the comics, and now they credit everybody for, like, letters and colorists and everything, which is a good thing. But back then there was little credits. Maybe an artist and a writer might get credit, but designers didn't get any credit. So I'll never be able to, yeah, even as a historian, as a researcher, all that knowledge is lost of who designed, some of those comic book covers, who did the logos, and who made the interesting layouts and stuff. I mean, most of the pages were just the same page after page of reprinting comics, but there were
Sure.
some really nice design elements and color choices and ways of putting together the product that made them look nice and accessible. And attractive to kids
Yeah.
mostly.
I was going to say, because you are working with, these pinups from yesteryear. I mean,
Mm.
Ditko, Kirby, and I'm curious, is your process for this, is it, I assume it's you're sort of taking it's is it to preserve kind of the historical elements that they had with their design back then, or sort of what do you see your role as being when you're interacting with these sorts of these titans of yesteryear, when you're sort of,
Well,
yeah.
I was kind of touching on that in that some design draws more attention. Book design draws more attention to the designer's work than the comic book artists who
Hmm.
are inside their work, and so you try to. I mean, I try to put a little some nice design chops into a book, but I try to ultimately showcase the work of Ditko and Kirby and friends, and to show off them and make them the center stage. So in some ways, you don't notice the design
Right.
as much. I try not to overly design a project like that, so that the king of comics, who is Steve Ditko, I'm sure you agree,
Hmm.
and people like also Jack Kirby, who's royalty also,
Yeah.
so that their work stands out, So I am influenced by growing up and reading comics as a kid, as far as my color choices,
Hmm.
and I think being so crazy about comic books when I was young made me realize that book design is like comics. It's the integration of words and pictures. So you have the pictures, which are the comics
Hmm.
primarily. That's I'm referring to them as the pictures. But then you have the introduction and the title page, which is like the first page with the name of the book on it, and the end papers, which are when you open up the cover of a hardback book, there's a 2-page spread that sometimes it's just a color or even just white paper, but I like to maybe do something a little fancy. This time I just took one of the horizontal type pinups they had in an old Marvel comic, and I kind of blew it up. So I don't know why anyone would give me an award for that, but but that $20 went a long way, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, but sometimes I do something fancy like a repeat pattern or something, or ghost back an image for the end paper. So the second you open the book, it gives you a feeling for the book and makes you kind of want to keep turning the pages, and it is reader friendly, so that just like you don't want to design a salt shaker that I keep referring to. It's so fancy that the salt doesn't pour out good, So
Right.
you want it to be functional,
Hmm.
yet you want it to be aesthetically. You want the salt shaker also function first, but then aesthetically pleasing, so it looks nice on your
Right.
dining room table as you salt your French fries.